question is that the Legislative Council amendment be agreed to. I call the member for Baulkham Hills.
Mr Speaker, I'm delighted that the Labor Party have introduced this amendment, because this is the funeral notice that will be attached to every single how-to-vote card they distribute next March. This is more proof positive that Labor are soft on crime. This is more proof positive that Labor have no desire to look after the victims of crime. This is proof positive that Labor are on the side of the liquor industry and on the side of the offenders. And for the opposition leader to stand up in this place today and accuse this side of the chamber of being in the pocket of the liquor industry is laughable. I know how much the Labor Party are in the pocket of the liquor industry, because I signed the cheques. When I was working for the Australian Hotels Association, part of my job was to wander down and talk to Sussex Street about the legislation that we wanted. Part of my job was to wander down to Sussex Street and talk to them about which ministerial appointments should be implemented. You guys wrote the book on being owned by the liquor industry. And don't tell us about people in the Liberal Party who are associated with the liquor industry, Mr Opposition Leader, because you've got Jason Bartlett, remember him? You remember him, Member for Toongabbie? He was the Press Secretary for Ian McDonald. That's a name that you don't mention much around here anymore, because he's before ICAC. But his Press Secretary is now down there calling the shots for the Labor Party and the liquor industry. You've also got John Whelan down there, the son of Paul Whelan, down there calling the shots for the Labor Party in the liquor industry. So, Mr Acting Speaker, as far as I'm concerned, the Labor Party have forfeited their right to stand in this chamber and lecture us about what is right and wrong with the judicial system in New South Wales. The member for Liverpool stands up there and he wants to be sanctimonious and tell us about what we should be doing to protect the reputation of the legal fraternity in this state. I mean, I remember vividly, as you would too, Mr Assistant Speaker, in the 1990s when his reputation here was completely damaged because it was highlighted how he stacked his branches from Housing Commission tenants to get himself pre-selected by the Labor Party. I remember it vividly. And now that Labor probably hasn't practiced lobbying on conveyancing in Lamia is telling us about how we should be making legislation to protect the victims of crime is just laughable. Mr Acting Speaker, I want to update the chamber on a court case. Maybe even the member for Heffron isn't aware of this, but this very day I've been reading about a judgment north of this city. A 23-year-old victim had $24,000 worth of surgery on him because he was assaulted. He was assaulted in the Sunshine Coast, and that assault was so bad that he required $24,000 worth of surgery and medical treatment. So that's not an insignificant offence. That is not an insignificant. It's not a paper cut, as the member for Parramatta quite rightly highlights. This is not an insignificant bit of damage to one's body. Mr Acting Speaker, the magistrate, on hearing this matter, sentenced the offender to 240 hours of community service. That's it. $24,000 worth of medical treatment, $24,000 in hospital bills, and the magistrate said, no, 240 hours worth of community service. And what did he say? How did he justify that community service? He said that the assault that created this $24,000 worth of hospital bills was not malicious. It was not gratuitous violence. That is the reason why we need to stand up for the people of New South Wales and highlight that the judiciary and the magistrates have got it wrong. If it's not this chamber, which has the power, which has the mandate, which has the will of the community behind it, if it's not this chamber that tells the magistrates and the bench and the judiciary that we expect something better from them in their deliberations, then who is? 240 hours. 240 hours of community service for smashing somebody so badly that they had a $24,000 hospital bill. And now the member for Heffron and the Shadow Attorney General and the Leader of the Opposition want to stand up here and say you don't have the right to tell the judiciary what to do. Well, Mr Acting Speaker, we do have the right to tell the judiciary what to do, and if we don't tell the judiciary what to do, who is going to tell the judiciary what to do? Who is? How can the member for Heffron and the man sitting behind him, the member for Toongabbie, walk down the main street of their electorates and not tell the parents of victims of crime that we're looking out for them?
Look them in the eye.
You cannot tell me that you have not had the same representations that I've received from concerned parents. I know people in the member for Toongabbie's electorate that actively tell their kids not to go into the city. I know people that live in the member for Toongabbie's electorate who say to their children, we will give you a taxi voucher to get to a local club or pub as long as you promise us that you will not go into the city. Why? Because they know there are thugs in the city who are going to do so much damage under the influence of drugs and alcohol. They will do so much damage and risk the livelihoods of their children that they're prepared to pay that extra money, give them a taxi voucher so that they can party locally. Mr Acting Speaker, the member for Toongabbie and his colleagues, the member for Liverpool and the Leader of the Opposition have said, but they're only 18. We can't expose them to this sort of justice that they're only 18. Well, let me tell you what you can do at 18, Mr Acting Speaker. You can vote for your country. You can vote for your government. You can become a justice of the peace. You can drink alcohol, you can smoke cigarettes, and you can serve your country. I'm pretty sure that we as a society would not allow 18-year-old kids to do those things, to make those decisions, to be exposed to that sort of danger, unless we were convinced that they could make decisions in an appropriate, meaningful and objective way. If we can't trust our 18-year-old kids with guns to protect this country with, if we cannot trust them to drink alcohol and drive cars, then why can't we trust them to take responsibility for their own actions? Because that's all we're asking this legislation to this parliament to do. That's what we're asking the upper house and members of the other place to do. We're just asking them to introduce legislation that tells 18-year-old kids that you are responsible for your actions. And for the member for Liverpool to stand up here and say, well, this legislation is outside the realms of people that aren't lawyers. Well, Mr Acting Speaker, the judiciary is full of lawyers. The member for Liverpool is allegedly a lawyer. And there are members of the other side, including the member for Heffron, who are a lawyer. They understand and they know that this legislation is written for lawyers, for lawyers. This legislation is written for lawyers. It's written so lawyers can use their power within a court to influence a judge to let their clients off. That's the whole idea of the judicial system. That's why we give people that are even guilty, who even plead guilty, that's why we give them a lawyer to protect them. That's why we don't allow them to go into a court unless they have been given exposure and conferencing with lawyers. This legislation is about restricting those tricks. People have no confidence in the judicial system in New South Wales because under that side, when they were in government, they allowed criminals to get off. They allowed criminals to get off, and as a result, those criminals have reoffended, and our children are at risk. I remember the member for Tweed in his remarks was highlighting about his childhood. Mr Acting Speaker, I remember my own childhood, not much different, obviously, than the member for Tweed's, although I have to hasten to add that it might have been about 30 or 40 years different. Mr Acting Speaker, Mr Acting Speaker, there is not a parent in this state that doesn't worry when their children are out. There is not. It was said to me when I had my first son, when you are worried when they come home from the hospital and you don't stop worrying until they're married and they're at home with their own kids. Mr. Atkin, as the member for Heffron says this, you still worry, and I think that is right. This legislation is about removing that worry. This legislation is about saying to those parents that are sitting at home worried about the safety and security of their children who are just out to have a good time. This legislation is about making sure those children are in as safe environment as we can possibly give. And those opposite want to deny the people of New South Wales that security, that sense of safety. And as far as I'm concerned, Mr Acting Speaker, this chamber, this government should not only move this legislation in its entirety, should not only reject the upper house for the silly amendments, but it should condemn the Labor Party for letting criminals get away with thug activity. Well, that's what this chamber should be doing, Mr. Acting Speaker. We should be reminding the Labor Party that this legislation is more than a bill. This legislation, this rejection is more than just a rejection. It's their death warrant.